All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to One Page Ahead podcast, where I break down popular self-help books one chapter at a time so you can get the conversational lesson without reading a single page. My name is Tom Singh, and in this first season, we're talking about Atomic Habits, one of the most popular books out there that folks start looking at when they start thinking about self-help. Now, this first chapter is interesting. It starts off with the story of a cyclist team. The Great Britain cyclist team for 100 years has won one single gold medal for the entire time. They changed one person, and his name was Dave. I'm going to butcher this name. Brailsford? I think that's the right name. And so what he changed was something called the aggregation of marginal gains. Like, what does that even mean? So they just focused on incrementally getting better at things over time. It's improving something 1%, just a little bit, every single time, every single day. And ultimately, what ended up happening there, 5 years after Dave took over the team, they dominated cycling. So in 2008, the British cycling team won 60% of the gold medals. 4 years later, 7 world records. In that same year, a gentleman, Bradley Wiggins, won Britain's first Tour de France. And the next year, his teammate Chris won it again. And Chris Froome would then win back-to-back Tour de France's, which is insane. All right, this is crazy. So that's how they start off the book, and it really draws you in. And as I'm thinking of things that come to mind, one of the recent posts from Sam Altman, who is the CEO of OpenAI, is he mentions you're not supposed to look for gaps in which you're not good at to be mediocrely good at everything. You're supposed to double down on the skill that you're really good at and make that indispensable. I'm thinking about that right away. How do you make your superpower even more super? And then you can obviously work on the things that are going to get you incrementally better as well. So during the span of 2007, 2017, British cyclists won 175 world championships and 66 Olympic or Paralympic gold medals. That's crazy, right? And that is just off systems that work. So what? Who cares? Well, the smallest habits make the biggest differences. When I hear that, I think about, well, the harder that you work, the luckier that you get, and vice versa. The things that you do to cut corners are always going to come back to bite you because you increase the probability of something negative happening. I think about people that steal. For example, if they steal a lot, at some point they're going to get caught because they increase their vulnerability and chances of being caught. Whereas if you do good deeds, we think about karma, good karma, bad karma. You're going to get good karma. Something good's going to happen, not because you're fishing for it, but you increase your probability of good things happening to you. And I think about that when we talk about this chapter of small habits make big differences. As you continue to do things, whether it's good or bad, it is going to amplify the outcome. And I think we live in a world right now where when we look at people's like successes, for example, it's really easy for us to take a look at someone's successes of that defining moment and say, well, that was luck. And then we undervalue all the things that people put into place in order to get there. Another thing is we often say to ourselves, in order for us to get incredible results, we have to put in massive effort. And I don't know if that's true, right? Folks are just cold turkey waking up at 4:30 a.m., right? Starting their gym because of motivation. And then it fizzles out. You don't need to do these incredible changes in order to get incredible results. I think we try to glorify that a little bit too much, in my opinion. And I think that we forget that it's just the little changes that makes a big difference overall. One of the things that when I was losing weight, people used to tell me is that, hey, why don't you just start with cutting out soft drinks? A lot of people give that advice. It's because it works. It's not that difficult to do. You just choose an alternative or a different option. And then over time, you'll automatically just start losing weight because you've cut out a little bit of sugar. That's what I think about when I think about the small changes for big differences. Now, one of the cool data points that they have in the book is 1% better per day is 37.8 times better for the year. 1% better per day equates to 37.8 times better in a year. If you do 1% worse per year, does that mean 37.8% times worse? I don't know. Who can say? I didn't write this book, but James Clear talks a little bit about the compound effect, right? in the book, it also talks about compounding for you or against you, right? Are we doing things that are going to compound for a better result? Are we doing things to compound against us? Like how you put that into perspective. Productivity compounds is what I think about. There's a TED talk I watched a long time ago. It says, make your bed. Make your bed first thing in the morning, because it's a small task that you can now compound and continue to trickle through your day. Whereas, let's say a stress compound is you're stressed in traffic. All right. And then you're stressed there, you get out the car stressed, and you talk to your family stressed, and you talk to your coworkers stressed, and then you're stressed at work, it compounds as well. So those are the different compounds. Knowledge compounds. You're listening to this podcast right now. You're learning things in this podcast, and you're going to take this and you're going to continue to tie it and make sense of the other things that you learn, and you compound that as well. And then you're going to teach it to someone else. And that's the best way of learning, in my opinion, is you learn it, you ingest it, and then you iterate it in a way that makes sense and simplify it to someone else. And you've learned it twice or 3 times by that point. Negative thoughts compound. That's one of the takeaways. If I am constantly thinking negatively about people or my environment, that's going to ultimately change the way that I think about the world and the way that I approach situations. We've all met people that just have nothing good but criticisms to give. And we don't want to associate ourselves with those people. You know, dropping the T, it's pretty fun to listen into, I'd say. And you're like, oh yeah, because it brings people together at first. But when someone is constantly negative and doesn't take accountability for actions, we typically draw away, like walk away from them, right? Leave that relationship and then feeling a little bit more breathe room. So those are compound moments. And now I'm going to move over to a different topic in the book, which is progress. Progress. What is it really like? When I think about progress, the example that James Clear in the book talks about is you got an ice cube in the room and it doesn't melt. And then you increase the temperature by 1 degree, doesn't melt. Another degree, doesn't melt. Another degree, and it starts to melt with a 1 degree shift. And there seems to be no difference with the increases before, but there's a huge change once the breakthrough happens. And breakthrough moments are usually a result of many actions that have happened in the past, many previous actions in the past. Okay. For example, I know someone who's a great friend of mine that tries different business ideas, doesn't work out. Invest time, money, and energy into it. Doesn't work out, but learns things along the way, learns how to do marketing, learns how to do Webflow, learns how to talk to suppliers. And then at some point in time, they find a successful business idea that's really successful and really good for them. And that is a breakthrough moment, but we discount all the things that they've done in the past. In this book, it talks about, let's not discount that and look at every step as a compound, as a learning lesson. It seems like a huge change, but really a lot of effort has been put into it. Contrary to that, we all know that there are times where we make changes, a few small changes in our lives, and we expect a result, but we don't see it. So then we stop doing those habits. For example, a lot of folks that maybe try to get up early in the morning, wake up early so they start their day early in the morning, and they don't see a massive difference in their day, and then they allow themselves to now sleep a little bit later again, and they wake up later, and now they don't wake up early anymore. And so failing to see that result also stops the habit from happening anymore. Another example is weight loss. I talk about weight loss a lot because it's my journey right now. My journey is weight loss. And if I don't see results for a week of me exercising, eating clean, and waking up early to do all these things that I feel is going to get me there, and I only focus on the end results and I don't love the progress and I don't enjoy the journey, then I'm not going to get there. I'm going to then turn back and be like, you know what? It doesn't work. Let's not do it. Let's try it for something else. Let's look for big impact, big results. But I know that if I stick to it, it's going to work. There's something called the plateau of latent potential. We think that progress is linear. If I continue to do it, it's going to be like this. What ends up happening usually is it's actually like a curve where with time and effort, at some point, it's just going to shoot up. For example, I think about weight loss. You don't see the results, and all of a sudden you see the result and it just expedites and it gets more and more clear that it's working. Or any goals that you've set that you've actually followed through, you start to see at a certain point, it's not linear. It just happens overnight. It almost feels that way. So same thing with the ice cube. I think about a video of a watermelon. You keep putting elastic bands on it until it's ready to explode. And at some point it explodes and you're like, holy crap, it exploded. But it's all the previous actions and elastic bands that you've put on that watermelon for it to actually explode. And when it explodes, the outside world only sees that dramatic change. But what they don't see is the effort and patience of putting every watermelon free elastic band on top of that watermelon. And so that is what I think about when I think about plateau of latent potential. Something else in this book that I thought that was a very, very, very important, and if I've lost your attention, I want to bring it back to, is forget about goals, focus on systems. So goals are the results that you want. Systems are the processes that you build to achieve those results. And so I thought that was a very strong takeaway, because it's focusing on how to be better is going to take you further than focusing on your end journey. I'm in sales, and I see a lot of sales reps, the ones that don't make it, are saying to themselves, when I hit my number, I'm going to be happy. There's nothing that satisfying at the end. You'll get 3 seconds of celebration. You've heard this before. When I hit my viral video, everything's going to be better. Not so much. I ran social media at a certain point. I've hit a couple viral videos, and it's nice. You get a little bit of a high, and it doesn't do anything. What should happen for all of us is enjoying the progress, enjoying the journey. So what does that mean? It means you got to fall in love with progression, and you got to fall in love with the journey and make it enjoyable, so that it makes it easier for you to continue that lifestyle and habit rather than get to a certain point. Think about The Biggest Loser. The folks that lose the weight very often gain it all back, because at the end they've hit the result. What happens then? They haven't built a lifestyle. They've just done big changes to lose all the weight, and then they're right back at where they were before. Another example in the book is every Olympian wants to win gold, right? Every one of them wants to win gold. And whether they want to win gold, there's a differentiator between successful and unsuccessful candidates. Okay. The goal isn't what differentiates them. The goal has always been there. It is systems that they built in place to get to that goal that differentiates winners and losers. It's the incremental improvements that I think about. So for me, I really want to read books and get better at what I do, which is to coach salespeople, to lead sales teams, and to run a successful business. And I find it difficult for me to sit down and read a book. And I don't know how you feel about it. And so I'd say, you know what I'm really good at? I'm really good at coaching and development. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to learn it for myself, and then I'm just going to talk about it the way that I do with my sales reps and sales teams. And at the same time, I'm going to learn this content. My goal here isn't to have a better goal. My goal here is to build a better system so that I can learn better, to then teach better and coach better, and to achieve different outcomes that I wasn't capable of before. And then realizing the goal is a momentary change, right? We talked about that earlier. You get a viral content, you get something happens dramatically, it spikes a little bit, and then it goes right back to normal with maybe a little bit of an elevated level. What's important in this book that it talks about is you fix the inputs and the outputs will fix themselves. The inputs are going to be the habits. All right, I'm just going to bring us back to just general life for a second here. A thing that I've learned in my past. When we talk about retirement plans, I learned in an article that a lot of people don't actually have retirement plans, especially the younger generations, because they actually dissociate themselves from their older selves. They feel like the 60-year-old version of them isn't somebody that they know or feel close to, and so they try to live in the moment, because it is tough. It's a tough society, right? It requires a lot of capital to live comfortably. We're all striving to get a little bit more, to do a little bit better. People think that the happiness of your efforts can only be enjoyed for your future self. You got to grind now, not be happy, and at a certain point you will be happy. And I'm not sure about that. I'm not so sure about once you feel that you've achieved it and you're there, that you're going to be any much happier, because usually we say, what now? I spent the last 10 years building my career, and I thought that when I feel like I've reached the top, I got a chip on my shoulder and I'm winning more, then I was going to be happy. And when I felt like I won, I wasn't any happier, but instead I felt like, what now? What am I going to do now? And how much time did I waste just focusing on that one goal without really enjoying the journey, looking back and celebrating with the people that were there with me? And I feel like that was a mistake. And then great people come and go, and I didn't really take the time to really appreciate the company. And in hindsight, I never want to be put in a place where I achieve a goal and then say I'm successful, or I fail one and feel disappointed. So back to the book, one of the lines I have here highlighted is ultimately it is your commitment to the process that will determine your progress. People that do things in commitment for a long amount of time and they continue to try to do better and be better at it, not just doing it for the sake of just doing it like a little robot. Those are the people that will find massive success or happiness in doing it. My trip to Japan a couple years ago, Japan's a beautiful place, by the way. I think it's a wonderful place to travel. I've never lived there, so I wouldn't know about the living there. But it's a beautiful place when I traveled because there are a lot of artisans. They actually spend a lot of time perfecting their craft. An example of perfecting craft on a capital manufacturer scale is you think about Toyota and Lexuses. You typically think about reliability. You think about Japanese cars, you typically think about reliability. And so with Toyota and Lexus, if you didn't know, they have something called a methodology called Kaizen. And so what that is with their engines, they just incrementally make it better. They don't change the whole engine structure. They don't do massive changes. They only change what they think is going to be incrementally better, and they keep what works. And over time, they have super reliable, robust engines and things that people love and enjoy because they don't really have to worry about any issues. And so that's what I mean by their commitment to the process will determine their progress. So in the upcoming chapters, we're going to learn about systems, we're going to learn about methodologies, and we're going to learn about a lot of cool different things. I think that's one of the coolest things about this book is actually focuses on doing things that don't seem too exciting, that are a little bit more vanilla, and it goes in contrary to what we see, which is completely flip the switch and go haywire, abnormal, and that massive change for massive results. But what's proven time and time again, and we can think of people in our lives, and I can think of people in my life, is that the ones that are consistent, that have passion in doing it, that enjoy the progress, that has built a system that allows them to continue to do something like that and continue to implement change and betterment are the ones that always succeed or get to the goal. So that's it for chapter 1. I mean, I loved it. We're going to head into chapter 2. If you haven't hit the subscribe yet, this is going to happen. We're going to do many different chapters. You are going to learn on this journey with me. My commitment for this chapter is I'm going to sleep early. So I'm going to enjoy winding down early so that I can wake up early. I'm going to build a system on that, but how to build that system, I'm going to continue to learn. And I've got a goal to be the best version of myself for 2026. And so follow me on this journey and let's get done.